Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Saint Raven here. I figured I wanted to try out something a little bit different. So since I'll be switching over to a new deck, IRL, that I'll be playing as one of my mains, I figured I'll do a quick little pros and con video for this deck. The deck that I'm gonna be playing, is probably like a lot of other people, Infernoids. Right off the bat, I really don't see this deck as gonna be tier one, just because of issues like let's see here. Inconsistencies mostly. Plus, it's really shut down by vanities, so it's not really gonna be a tier one deck, but I can still see it being tier two, if not tier 1.5. So I've got a list of pros and cons for it. So for those of you that don't know what the deck basically does, it is a OTK based deck. The monsters all cannot be normal summoned, and you can't have cap. And you have a monster level cap of, you can't have control amount levels 8 or higher, total levels of 8 or higher, and that includes your ranks. And that has to be able to special summon them. So, and they have to be special summoned by banishing. So there are some limitations to the deck, which is one of the biggest issues I find. But looking at the pros and cons, the pros, I have that it's a very powerful deck, easy to OTK. It's fast. It's a lot of builds you'll see are Lightsworn compatible. Personally, I'm playing just 2 copies of Raiden and 3 copies of Wolf. People usually tend to play maybe 1 or 2 copies of Lila and like potentially a full set of Lumina, just to go like Lumina into Lumina and then overlay it for Dante, and then mill 3. Um, for the most part, depending on what cards you're using as tech cards, it's not really affected by one of the most common floodgates in the game right now, which is one of the most common side deck floodgates, which is Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, and the lesser seen Light Imprisoning Mirror. The deck itself has a really great matchup against Shaddolls, Satellanites, and Burning Abyss. Shaddolls because I can go tribute one of my monsters and banish their fusion from the graveyard. I can banish a Falco before it triggers, and just do plays like that. Oh, you want to send a Squamata to send another card? Nope, banish Squamata. You want to send a Falco, or you want to send an Eclipse Wyvern to get a Dark Arm? Banish Eclipse before it could trigger. Really useful. Satellanites, it's just a giant fuck you when you just go and banish Deneb when they summon Altair. It's a whole thing. I just love doing that. And then Burning Abyss, same kind of reason with Shaddolls. You you banish them before they can trigger in the graveyard. So, like they activate Dante's effect, detach Scarm, detach Sair or something, Graph, chain to it, banish, tribute banish, whatever you want to do. They're really good at avoiding targeting. You can't like chain. It's hard. Like if you were to summon up something like a Adardel, the level 8, and your opponent's like, "Yep, I'm gonna chain Bottomless." Cool. Chain his effects, tribute himself, banish a card, and then just remove 2 more cards from my graveyard, special summon him back. One of my favorite things to do is like if my opponent tries to go for 101, banish one of the materials, just tribute himself. Now they have a 101 or Castell that doesn't have any material on it. So, kind of mentioned this already. They all have built-in DD Crow effects, with the exception of Unuku, their boss monster. One of the cool things that I really like is that the deck's kind of budget friendly. Some prices they might be a little bit higher, like for some odd reason, I guess on TCG Player, the level 3 Harmodic is like $25. Yet if you go on Troll and Toad, it's like 12. Um, it's kind of budget friendly, which also supports the fact that of which you don't really need an extra deck. Like you have, it's kind of like a hard thing to go into the extra deck in this deck, just because your levels are so scattered. Um, basically having levels 2 through 10. Um, so unless you have unless you get out multiple copies of the same one, it's hard to go into a lot of exceeds. Plus, like I said, it's a fast OTK deck that you don't really always need to go into your extra deck. Um, as of right now, we're coming into a new format with the new release of the cards, so this deck isn't commonly sided against. There are a lot of really bad cards to side into or really good cards to side into the deck that just because most of the other decks aren't hurt by it, it's not worth playing it. And plus, it's not going to be like a tier 1 deck, so it's not needed to be. It's not going to be something commonly seen in the extra deck or in the side deck. Um, the deck's not really like shut down by Denko Seka, which just means that should all players just gonna forego the play and just go straight into like construct or something. So, um, the next thing is they have a really good support card in the form of Void Seer, which is basically a super lance. It protects from all card effects, and you can banish it during the same turn or another turn to prevent the destruction of one of your monsters. So really great support card. If you do want to play an extra deck, you have access to number 11, one of the best rank 7s in my personal opinion. And just kind of going back to the whole Lights 1 compatibility, and like I mentioned in my build, you can run Reasoning triggers Wolf. And that's just a really great thing to do. It's like, oh, okay, well, activate Reasoning, start milling. Oh, look, there's a wolf. Oh, look, there's another wolf. You know, as long as you get rid of them. Cards like Gem Knight Pearl are amazing in this deck because they are exceeds monsters that have fairly high attack. 26 is not anything to scoff at, but obviously since it doesn't have an effect, its level does not count towards your cap, or rather its rank. That's a lot of the good pros I could think of. I'm not going into like each monster's effect. I mean, like Adidel attacks twice if it destroys a monster by battle. Sietmas, I don't know how it's pronounced, level 7. Basically just, if it attacks a monster during the end phase, banish a card. Piety is basically just if it attacks over a monster, it just basically becomes a Spirit Reaper, and that it just randomly discards a card from your hand. But Bone's Hand, level 4, Petarula is basically a Lila. The level 3 is basically, Harmodec is basically just like a Raigeki Break or something along those lines. Tribute to the Doom. Target. See ya. Goodbye. The level 2, which is probably like one of the best ones, which is Antra. He is an evac that targets that could actually target face up back row as well. So it has a little bit more utility because like with the exception of obviously like floodgate cards, you can easily bounce cards back. But some of the cons I found is the deck is way too dependent on Monster Gate and Reasoning. Like, if you don't open up with it, you're going to have some slow plays, which kind of goes as a contradictory statement to the fast deck, to the deck being fast, but that's how it becomes fast. Continuing on with the dependence on Reasoning, the deck is inconsistent because you're milling. So basically, all the spells and trap cards you may run in the deck become dead unless you're playing unless the only trap cards that you're playing are stuff like Breakthrough Skill. So a lot of times you're not going to be able to use them. So it's kind of hard to side in, which is the next thing. Like if you're like, okay, I'm playing against, Cleese or something. I have like, let's see here. Like you say you put in Fairy Winds or you have Spell Shattering Arrows. You can end up milling them, and it doesn't, you won't make a difference, which is why it's similar with Lightsworn's why it's so hard to side into the deck. Like I mentioned, the level 8 or higher cap, or the higher than level 8 cap, is a huge thing, because if you summon like the boss monster, Unuchu, Basically, any Infernoid plays that you have at that point become stopped. Um, the deck is just completely destroyed by Vanities, Imperial Iron Wall, the Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, Macro, and D-Fissure. You cannot do anything. Your deck is just dead at that point. You have very little normal summons that you can play in the deck. Um, Personally, I'm playing 5 normal summonable monsters in the form of Blaster, 2 Raiden, 2 Card Trooper. Again, if you're playing Lightsworn Engine, you'll probably have a couple Lilas or Luminas. The matchup against Klees isn't favorable. Your biggest play is going like into Adadel and then swinging twice, but because Adadel has to be able to destroy the monster and send it to the graveyard, it just basically means that you're not going to get the second attack off. Although it does have a means to get rid of Killer, which is not a common thing to see. Sorry, Towers. Because of its inconsistent levels, you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 10. It's harder to go into your extra deck Xyz wise, unless of course you're playing like multiple copies of the level 4 and then have like a couple normal summonable level 4s, which I do in my deck. Then you have access to that. You do have an interesting range of synchros using cards like Raiden, but outside of that, like you're kind of stuck for your synchro plays. Although you have some interesting synchros on hand that you can use, stuff like Gaia Knight, the Force of Earth, which has no effect, which means that it doesn't count towards your cap, and it's still 26 beat stack. You can't really use hand traps, so you can't use Flying Sea, Max Sea, Effect Veiler, all like DD Crow, but I mean all of your monsters basically are DD Crow, so it doesn't really matter for that instance. But you can't really use them because like you'll go Monster Gate, or Monster Gate or Reasoning. Oh well, there's Card Trooper top card, or sorry, not Card Trooper. Like there's a Effect Veiler. Now I gotta special summon it. Let's see here. Can't use the hand traps. It's hard to run spells and trap cards because, like I said earlier, the deck becomes inconsistent because you're milling. You're gonna start milling most of your. You're gonna go through like half your deck off of like 1 or 2 reasonings. So you may run the 3 reasoning and 1 monster gate, but you may only get off one reasoning, 1 or 2 reasonings per game or something. You're limited on your normal summons. You don't want to play too many because then you're gonna end up milling less cards off of a reasoning. At least that's my personal opinion on it. Let's see here. There's kind of like a lackluster support cards for it. And the reason why I say this is like you have your Void Seer, you have your Eye of the Void. Those are like your only 2 good spell and trap cards to use. Eye of the Void being a trap card that allows you to special summon an Infernoid monster from your hand without ignoring the summoning conditions. Sorry. Which is kind of okay, but its effects become negated, so you can't really tribute it until the end of the turn. And then the Void's here. But other than that, you have like a trap card that's like you send a card to your graveyard. You can send 1 or 2 copies of an Infernoid monster to your graveyard, but it's destroyed if you control a monster that isn't an Infernoid. And you get like a field spell that just spawns a token during the standby phase, so it's not the best thing ever. Plus, there's no draw support or searching engine for it. Those are 2 of the biggest issues right there. It's like, I mean, you can go through your deck fast, but you don't get to draw cards off of it. Like the only card that you can use to draw cards is Card Trooper. You could end up drawing dead cards. Like you could dead draw very easily early the game. Like you could end up opening with like 3 of your level 8s or something, and then you'd be forced to go neg to summon a monster, which is something they really don't want to do. You want to banish from the graveyard if possible. And the biggest thing also is because I'm playing wolves, um, you may end up getting dead draw wolves. I mean, there is an easy solution to that in solar recharge, or yes, solar recharge. So, but outside of that, like those are really some of the biggest pros and cons I can think about the deck. The deck itself is really fun to play. Um, it's one of those decks that like Light Sworns, you don't know the outcome until you activate that reasoning. Because you could go activate reasoning, reveal top card, it be like a card trooper, and you're like, well, fuck. But other times you can end up milling like half your deck and then set to go. So personally, it's gonna be a deck that I'm gonna love playing. Hopefully, they're supposed to be getting some more support cards soon. There's only 7 monsters right now. I think they're supposed to be getting a 1 and a 6 for sure, and maybe a 9. I don't know. But outside of that, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens to the future for this deck. Unfortunately, I don't think there really is any set builds yet outside of like the Light Sworn Infernoid build. So it's gonna be interesting to see how people will be able to build it in the future. I think outside of that, that's gonna be it for this video. Can't really think of any other decks I would try doing this for because I only really play a select few. But I might try doing more of these in the future. But if I don't be so surprised. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.